Today is December 15th, 2016. It is approximately 10:10 a.m. This is Luciana Sprague, representing the City of Savannah's Research Library Municipal Archives. I'm interviewing Charlesetta, Williams-Orage, is that correct?
Yes.
For the City of Savannah's Carver Village History Roundup Days project. We are conducting this interview at the historic Carver Village Community Center. Today we'll be discussing the history of the Carver Village neighborhood and the surrounding community. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start by having you tell us your full name.
My name is Charlesetta Manuel Williams-Orage.
And Williams-Orage is hyphenated.
Yes.
Okay. And where were you born?
I was born at 35 Park Avenue, here in Savannah. It's down Cornwall Street.
Called?
Cornwall Street.
Cornwall. So since you are having some trouble with your voice today, I might repeat some things for the camera. So 35 Park Avenue, now called Cornwall Street.
Yes.
And when were you born?
May 17, 1943.
May 17th, 1943. So Cornwall Street is in Carver Village?
Well, Cornwall Street, or Park Avenue, was before Carver Village. It is known as the old Waterworks. So we cannot do a history, as I said in the past, about Carver Village unless we incorporate the other 5 subdivisions that was here prior to the building of Carver Village. And they were the Springfield Terrace, the Waterworks, which is unofficial, but it was named by the Negroes, or African Negroes as they were known at that time, and that consists of where the city lot is. And it used to be a fountain there, I was told, and the first water meter in this section was there, so they named it Waterworks. And then you have the McGatty Road, and that's off of Stiles Avenue. And then you have Colletts Quarters, and then it was Shipyard. So these areas were here before the building of Carver Village section.
Okay, let me go over those. So Waterworks, Springfield Terrace, Mechanics Row?
McGatty Road.
McGatty Row?
Yes.
Okay. Colletts Quarters?
Collects Quarters.
And Shipyard?
And Shipyard.
Okay. And where did you go to school?
I attended Springfield Terrace School, and I started in the year of 1949.
And what grades did it go through when you were there?
At that time, it was from 1st through 7th grade, but we had half-day sessions. In the morning time, it was from 8 to 12, and the evening sessions were from 12 to 4.
Was that because there were so many kids?
Yes, and to accommodate the students in the area so that everyone can receive an education.
And how was the school's facilities? Were they good?
Beg your pardon?
How was the school's facilities? Were they good facilities?
Well, back in those days, we didn't have air conditioning, and you up the window during the summertime hard. And I went to the evening session from 12 to 4. And the janitor, Mr. Smith, he kept the buildings clean, immaculate. And he kept the grounds clean, good. And he also, we used to use steam heat, and he had to put the coal into the furnace. And we were very warm during the winter time, or you kept a coat on. And in the summertime, you did the best that you could because it was extremely hot.
So you went to school during the summertime too?
Yes, but in May, it's warm. So now we did during the summer months, June July, August, we were out. But when you have May coming in, it's hot days, and some days it's cool.
Did the school have indoor bathrooms?
This is something that I had to go back and inquire from others. Yes, we did, but it was a little building set aside, and which is torn down now. And I spoke to one of the former students, and she had to bring that to my memories. But yes, I think we had to share. The girls went in at one time, then the boys, and the cafeteria was a 3-room house that was donated by Christopher and Lucille Law. It's now torn down, but that was the first cafeteria that I was told and remember.
So it was like a house next door to the school?
Yes, it was on private property, and he donated that until the school was able to build a cafeteria. The community, although I don't remember some of the people's names, everybody collectively worked for the school or volunteered to help the students and the school and the teachers. So it was one community school.
Are there any teachers or principals that you specifically remember?
Yes, I remember Mrs. Harrison, and I remember, well, this was later on, but Mrs. Harrison was the principal of Springfield Terrace School. She was friendly but stern. And we parents knew exactly what was going on. So you can say this was the beginning of the charter school principal because the parents were involved. And all the thing the teachers had to do was send a note. We had to carry the note home. Whether the parents could read the note or not, we had to bring that note home because the teachers, and including Miss Harrison, will follow up on it. How do I know? Because
Do you have a note sent home?
I didn't deliver my note. I read it. I said, no, I'm not going to tell my grandmother about this one.
And did they find out anyway?
Yes. Oh, yes. Like I said, they will follow up.
And as a child, where would you play in the neighborhood?
Well, we had the playground. Mrs. Wright was the playground director. And we had soccer, that's where I learned how to play soccer, volleyball, dodgeball, softball. We had swings, we had the metal swings with the rubber seats and the metal merry-go-rounds. So, and we had a basketball, which was dirt, but we all chipped in, and we had recess, and we had a good time. And we played all kind of games. And during the 1st of May, we had our May Festival, planting the maypole, and they improvised a lot that we didn't have as other students, but the teachers were very creative in getting us to learn. And if you want to talk about the books, we received, so in the 1st grade, we received secondhand and maybe kindergarten books. So we were way behind the Caucasian students. But the teachers, they improvised. So we had to read a lot. Mary's Spot, Run, Mary C. Spot, Deep. Those are the type of books we started off with. But in addition to that, the teachers spent their own money to provide materials for us to learn.
Since the school was broken into 2 sessions, did you have to share supplies and books between the 2 sessions?
Yes. What we did, if I remember correctly, now I'm going to correct myself, each class had their own, or each student had their own books, because now certain books we couldn't take home, so that if it was just one copy, then we had to share that. But basically, I remember having some days I had books and some days I didn't. So I'm contradicting myself, but I'm going by memory now. But we had a lot of writing. we had to do. So sometimes we did and sometimes we didn't.
Tell me a little bit about the houses in the Waterworks community. What kind of houses were there?
This area at that time was poor, but it was a loving community. For an example, I was raised in the same house when I moved from 109 Park Avenue to 35 Park Avenue to the former Cafeteria that my cousin donated and my grandmother rented that. My maternal grandmother reared me. So we didn't have electricity. We had kerosene lamplight, a wooden burning heater, and eventually we got to a kerosene stove. Now, Chris Law, Lucille Law, they had indoor plumbing and electricity. Some people had and some people did not. So majority of the people at that time did not have utilities. They had candles, or like Miss Miley, I think she's in one of the pictures, and Canal, which is now Stella. They had kerosene, wood burning, and I think it was one family that was more advanced that had electricity. So it was spot and go. Most of the people did not have electricity or running water.
Wow. What about paved roads and street lighting?
Well, Park Avenue was the first paved street out here because the Seaboard repair shop that was at the end of Park Avenue, which is now a multi-complex area. So therefore the trains used to come on Styles, what was Felix, now Magazine, but now the trucks was transportation going to the Seaboard. That's why they paid. Now for Magazine, west of Cornwall, with Park Avenue at that time, you had the Caucasian section that was working for the Seaboard. East of Magazine, going towards Styles, you had the African Americans. And McGatty Road with African Americans, Colletts Quarters, which years later some people will remember as Mexico City, because of CO, that was all African Americans. Now coming back to Maple Street, which is now Pitt Street, used to consist of Caucasians. Now we had a factory out here, the first potato chip or potato factory, French fries. If I remember his name, Hastings Hagens. It used to be on Bowden Street. Now that's after Carver Village was built. And I think I was around about 12 when they started building Carver Heights, because it used to be a swamp and it used to be a dairy back there. And I used to go back there with the boys, because I was a tomboy, to get driftwood. So all this was swamp area. So you had key areas in Carver Village. At that time, the land was owned by the Seaboard Trading Company for 100 years, but the buildings were owned by the owners. But outside of that area is like Springfield Terrace, the Waterworks, McGatty Road, and Colletts Quarters, all the others I have mentioned, they were owned by African Americans or they were renting. Now, one person, Arthur Grant, owned a lot of homes out here that he rented out. He is deceased. So he owned, used to be about 5 houses from where I'm living now, all on Allen Avenue and Elliott Avenue. And I think as far as, and as we used to say, in town, but we were referring to off Ageechee Road, where the African Americans live. But coming back, you had a lot of people that owned the land, but was rented from African Americans as well.
Let me go back and ask a few questions. So you mentioned Mexico City. Do you know why they refer to it as Mexico City?
Yes. The young man that knew me, as he said before I was born, C.O. White.
C.O. White.
C.O. White, yes. He was considered as being the mayor. And the policemen at that time, they didn't go back there because it was one way in and one way out. And it was very dangerous. And if you didn't know anyone back there, especially CO, you didn't go in that area at all. It was, let's say, equated to the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah. So a lot of crime, criminals used to hide. They used to shoot one another. Look at, and he had a club back there, unofficial, selling moonshine, sealed liquor, whatever you wanted. He was called, quote unquote, a hustler.
Okay. And what time period is this?
Oh, let's see now, 60. Let's go back from the 50s to the 60s because I left. Went to college and etc. So somewhere in the, because he used to live on Elliott Avenue, which the houses are torn down now. His mother used to live on Elliott Avenue, and he could be a product of Springfield Terrace as well, now that I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
And his wife, so there's a lot of it, because it was more like a little gang type management.
And the area that's referred to as Mexico City, did I understand it right, is also the area referred to as Colletts Quarters?
To what, please?
Colletts Quarters? Is that the same area?
It was the Colletts Quarters.
Colletts Quarters. How do you spell that?
And I'm going by pronunciation, C-O-L-A-C-K, Quarters.
Gotcha.
Right.
And then could you also spell McGatty Row?
M-A-G-A-B-B-R-O-Y, McGatty Row.
Okay.
And this is farming from the older folks.
Gotcha. Okay. Then I also wanted to ask you about the potato chip factory.
Correction. It was French fries.
French fries.
The crinkle French fries, and yes,
Okay.
that was on Bowden Street. The building is still there.
And did you say it was started or owned by a man named Hastings or Hagen?
Yes, a Jewish man by the name of Hagen. He's deceased now. I can get his correct name, as I know someone that used to live out here, used to have the cleaners in there, used to do his clothes.
And then I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about the dairy that used to be here.
Oh, yes, that was way back in this area. Now we had 2 dairies. One is where Cloverdale is located now.
And what was that called? Do you know?
I think if I remember correctly, and I got to double check on this because I was just concentrating on this area. I think if it was not Star Dairy, but I'll double check that. But there used to be a dairy then, there used to be a dairy back here years ago before I was born. And there used to be an airplane factory here as well, where the school is.
Uh-huh.
So that information I picked up. Now, when I did research for the 50th anniversary, I wrote information. Mr. Richards had the booklet, and I misplaced mine, but I need to get a copy. But Springfield Terrace, let's go back to that school, that was donated by, if I remember his name correctly, Williams-Orage, an Irishman. And you know about the plantations. So all of this was a plantation as well. They didn't change over. So then when the dairy came, it was, I don't know how long it was here, but I was told about it. And then I don't know if that dairy moved over to Cloverdale, because when that dairy moved, it was one family that used to live over there, the Cummins family, with all of this big old mud and swamp. You know.
So you mentioned some of the white people that lived in the area worked for the railroad. Did the African Americans also work for the seaboard, or did they work
Some
elsewhere?
of them, yes, some of them did. Matter of fact, I was told by my paternal grandmother, the land that the seaboard purchased was from one of my great-great-great-grand aunts who was a Blackfoot Indian. So Victoria was her first name. She sold the land to the seaboard, and that's how that developed. Because African Americans had a lot of land, the land that I'm on. My great-great-great-grand aunt and uncle purchased that in 1899. So we had a lot of land that was owned by African Americans. But the seaboard purchased land from Magazine on toward west to accommodate the employees. And we were not permitted, the children, to go up there. My cousin, she was deceased, she was very daring. And she would skate up there and the kids would throw rocks at her or whatever. Because we knew not to always turn around. But she was just that daring because of the segregation that was going on at that time. Now, when Maple, when the Caucasians started moving off from Maple, I don't remember that, but eventually, it must be had to be in the early 20s or so, because that's when Chris Long purchased some land, 115 Maple Street, for his son. So that I know. So it had to be cleared at that time.
Do you want to talk about any churches or businesses in the area that were important?
Yes. At that time, was only two churches. You had, the name was Hannah Chapel. That was on Maple Street, which is now Pitt, Hannah Chapel, AME. And I remember Pastor Smith, because I was a little girl, and there was various pastors, but he really had a big impact on me. I remember the ladies selling fish dinners to raise money to improve the church. The second church was Goodwill Baptist Church on Murphy Avenue. And I don't remember the pastor name, but my godmother and cousin, she was a member of that church. Florence Perry was her name. And then the church eventually moved to Bowden Street. They purchased some land there. So the present pastor is, I can't think of his name right now, but anyways, that church moved. But then after that, there was a tent, and I'm trying to think of his name. He used to have sawdust. The name could come to me, and I can visualize playing and going in afterwards. Solomon Temple. And it moved, he started out, his name was Bishop Solomon, and he started out in a tent here where a church is located now. But then he moved to West Broad, and West Grenade Streets. Now the church is on Augusta Avenue. He's long deceased. But those were the three. And we had a lot of little house churches that I just don't remember the names.
What about businesses?
The businesses, we had Kimber, Street Grocery Store. He was a Jew, and he helped a lot. He extended credit to the citizens of the area. And then that was on Johnson and West Grenade Street. And then the next door, we call it the Greek Corner, Greek because he was Greek. That was on the corner of Styles and West Grenade. And he extended credit as well. I remember going in there with a dime and had what we used to call the holy bread, cinnamon, 2 cinnamon roll, a nickel worth of cheese, and a Pepsi. Now does that, but that dime bought me. So that was the type of people they were. They really helped a lot, and they cooperated in the community as well. Kipper and my paternal grandmother had a unique, and my paternal grandmother, but I remember Kipper coming to that little 3-room house where we're living, and he said, you know, you did quite well in raising Charlesetta, but you need help, because she was taking in laundry, and when I was born, now talking about jobs, she was pulling moss off of trees for 25 cents a day. And she's one of the ones that laid the cobblestones on River Street. So there's a lot of history out here in my family as well as in the community.
What was her name?
Florence Manuel. So that's where she injured her arm, and they set it in clay. She said that she couldn't work. Aunt Lucille, as I called her, she was a homemaker. Her husband, Chris Long, was a railroad man, so she didn't have to work. Those who worked at the Union Camp at that time, or sugar refinery, most of the times that their spouse stayed at home. But some of them worked, as my paternal grandmother, she worked as a maid at the Atlas home, which I don't know if you remember Lipo Atlas department store. She was one of the maids. And she also, to supplement her income for $10 a week, sometimes 12 plus hours a day, she sold dinners and moonshine and seal liquor, as they say, to supplement the income. Never was on welfare. They believe in hard work, and the people participated. So whatever the people could do, taking laundry, seamstress. A lot of people, CO did not have running water. They had the, we will call it the semi-flush outside. You could flush it, but you still had to go outside. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother lived on Elliott and Grenade Street, 1405. She had electricity, but she had to go next door to use the bathroom, which had plumbing. So I was in 2 worlds. I was in a world with primitive use, and I was in a world with the modern use. My maternal grandmother did not have the utilities, but the new technology, but my paternal grandmother did. She moved from a kerosene stove to wooden burner stove to a gas stove. So she moved on up. So now my first gas stove that my paternal grandmother ever had, I purchased it, and refrigerator. What did she use it? She preferred the wooden burning heater, and I still have that heater. You know? So now, later on in life, going back to the businesses, trying to forget this, I know his name. he opened a store on Bowden Street starting, goodness, I just talked about it. It'll come to me. But he was one of the first, but let me move back and I'm gonna come back to him. Cooks and the Conyers. The Cooks, Mr. and Mrs. Cooks, was the first one African American to start a grocery store. And that store is still in existence right off of Magazine and West Greenwich Street. It's called the Budget Store now. And they live next door in the house that is there. So they own that mall. And the Conyers had a little confectionery store. And I'm still trying to think about, oh my goodness, I know his name. I have to ask Minister Ellis.
When did you start seeing some of those stores closing, like Kipper's and the Great Corner Store? When do you see, it sounds like there used to be more stores than there are now.
Yes. With Kemper, let's start with him. Oh, let me mention one other. The service station, Murphy, they were out here, as that's where the Jackson Brothers LG goes now. The Murphys was out here for years. And that triggers another thought as Griffin Garage. That is still, he was here ever since I was a child prior to, and he owned several homes that he rented out as well. And the family usually rented out, but now it is closed. It was sold to someone else. Kemper, his son inherited the business, and he had a whiskey store right next to Jackson Brothers, the Murphys. And I was told with gambling, etc., he lost the businesses. So, and further down, he saw, I don't know, somebody else started buying it, and it was never a grocery store again on the corner. It's a church now. The Greek, I think he sold his property after he died. That's the only thing that I can say about that. Irvin is the name that I was trying to think of. He had a grocery store on Bowden Street. And mismanagement, whatever, then he eventually downsized to nothing. And Cook, Mr. Gibbs had a store right there, as in the first house, the exhibit house for Carver Village. He had a little confectionery store, and then Irvin moved there, and eventually he became ill, and Gibbs just became sick, and he didn't manage the store anymore. Cooks, they died out, and in the store, but the store is still being used. Their brother is managing the building.
Let's talk a little bit about the development of the Carver Village neighborhood in the 40s and the 50s. Do you have any thoughts about that you want to talk about?
It was amazing. Everyone was very happy to get rid of the swamp. And plus it was the first, as you know, worldwide subdivision for African Americans. I used to have a little green book. For some reason, I always loved history, and I misplaced this book at the age of 12 that gave me the history of the area. And listening to the older generation, the rule of thumb, let me inject this, when the old folks started talking, the children had to leave the room. But for some reason, because I had to write letters and go to the store for them, they never. So this is how I got a lot of history. I was among them and listening. Now, they were very happy about the village. A lot of them wanted to move there, but the income was not sufficient to pay the down, pay the deposit. I think it was $100. And you had Miss Miley for an example. She used to pick cotton, but she was illiterate, so she couldn't afford it. So there were a lot of people like her around here. Although Chris Law could have, but he had his home already, so he didn't want to stay. Some people just preferred staying in the old Waterworks, because that was a family of itself. But the people that moved, some of the people that moved there, as a child, I used to know everybody in all areas, because I used to walk the streets, and, well, like I said, it was a family. So, but everybody was very happy.
Do you have any other memories or stories you want to share?
Any memories?
Any other memories or stories you want to share?
Oh, yes. For an example, for those who did not have fuel, electricity, how did they supplement? Cutting wood, which I had to do, but because of the steam engine, remember I told you about the seaboard, they used to throw out the used coal on the side of the railroad track of the magazine and Felix, and I and a lot of people with tubs, we will go and get the coal, wash them off, and then you use them to heat by. And everyone did not have a washing machine and dryer. I don't think very few if they did, but you used to use 3 tubs, and you had to carry the water to the tubs, and you ball the white in a balling block. Now the first laundromat, I forgot about that, by Chris Law and Lucy Law. The Law family managed that. So cousin Sammy and William Law was his wife at that time. His name was Samuel Law. They ran the laundromat, which is now, used to be a club, now it's a church.
These were cousins of yours?
Yes.
So what makes the village special or better than any other neighborhood in Savannah?
Unity. Even though I'm disabled and I don't walk like I used to, but I get information. If they have my number, they will call, or they'll send someone by to let me know what is going on. For an example, if they see me going to the store, would you call the city? So you can call 311. No, would you call the city? Because you will get things done. So for some reason, I eventually, because of all of this, people ask me to do things and I see something that needs to be done, I will call Nelson, for an example. I will call various people, Van Johnson. I would even call now the mayor of the village, but I get to know the people at 311. So people will come to me with their problems, personal problems and community problems. So I said, well, I'm considered as the self-appointed community activist. Plus, I'm a lifetime member of the Carver Heights organization. So if something needs to be done, whether it's personal, they'll come to me. Some of the people are deceased now, but quote unquote, I take it very loosely. You the mayor, I was told. I'm not the mayor, but this makes them feel. And the people that God has put in my pathway, I don't shun anybody. The homelessness, drug dealers, drug users, the lawyers, doctors, whomever that comes, or they see me, policemen, Rivera's one of them. They know that you walk, you see things. People will come to you. So I try to have good advice, and I pray about it. So the unity, if I'm in trouble, somebody gonna come. Give you a good example. Young man from the streets came to me on my back porch, said, "Mom," and I'm known as Mom, Auntie, Grandma, Street Grandma, whatever they call me, sister. Are they relatives? No. But that's the respect, and I give them respect. I want you to be careful on walking, because I lose my balance, I stagger. And he said, because there's a young group all over Savannah trying to get the baddest reputation. And I hope you don't edit this out, because it's very important in all communities, in all walks of life. And they would do anything to obtain that reputation. And I don't want anything to happen to you, because then it's trouble. I think I don't walk that way that much anymore. And he said, "Oh, by the way, I have been in prison." And I said, "Well, son, if you don't mind my asking, why were you in prison?" And he said, "I killed 4 people. This man has been in my house, and I didn't know it." And he said, "You know, you mean so much to me. I tell you things I won't tell my own mom. And I don't want nothing to happen to you." I said, "Son, I thank you." I gave him a hug. I will listen to you. So there's a lot that is going on. And I try to share to people, and I talk to the young people. And a stranger came to me and said, "You just don't know the impact that you have on the young females." And they talk about me in the barbershop. "She's a good lady." That's Mom. So if they talk about you in the barbershop, or if it's bad, they're going to do whatever's necessary. They won't help. If it's good, they will protect you. So I walked in one of the conversations, and the young man said, "That's the woman. Said she's more beautiful now than she was when she was younger." I said, "Oh, you got me confused." He said, "No, I know who I'm talking about, because you used to dress from poor, color code. That was the key. I wore hand-me-downs, as you used to say. It's thrift or second-hand now. But once I learned colors, all you have to do, change the buttons or whatsoever. But anyways, the unity, but now we have a new group that I have to learn. And you speak to some of them, they think that you're cursing them. And I have to work with them to let them know, no, you're not being abused. And this is all over Savannah. Yes, I'm from the school that we speak. So, how you doing, sweetheart? So, even when I go to the doctor's office, I speak to everybody. Some speak, some don't. But it's the unity. The older generation dying out, we have to now bring the younger generation under our wings. But too many of the older generations are afraid to step out because of the disability or the age. And fear cannot stop us. The older folks did not have fear. I used to walk every street out here. The Savannah Electric Company thought I was an employee. I used to come out at 9 or 10 o'clock and tell them every street light that was out. I have the orange tape now, so to put around the posters, but I can't do it anymore. I just take magazines to Styles Avenue now and let them know the streets out, so the rest of them, they can do that side shit. So, because I was raised out here, I was born and raised out here, the unity, a lot of the people, I had so many places to go to eat, and coming home and knowing that the Fords had homemade prune bread cooked for me, so that's what I missed, is the unity, and everybody looked out for everyone.
Wonderful. Well, I think this has been a wonderful interview, and I appreciate you sharing your memories of the Waterworks and Carver Village with us today. And I think this is that's a wonderful point to end it on, so.
Thank you. I appreciate you interviewing me and taking the time out to I hope I was beneficial to the
Absolutely.
project.
Absolutely. All right. Stop that.
Now, because I collect things,
Yes.
may I have a copy of?
Yeah, I'm actually, let me turn this off. So I am speaking with Charlesetta, Williams-Orage, and we are looking at a picture of the Springfield Terrace neighborhood, and she is going to walk through the picture, pointing out what's going on in the picture and what we're looking at. Okay, this is Charlesetta.
On the south side of West Greenwich Street, and notice it's dirt, this is Springfield Terrace. On the north side of West Greenwich Street, this is the old Waterworks. And I'm going to start with Springfield Terrace. The building in the far background, I was informed by the late Joe Cotton that this is the first Springfield Terrace school before it's moved to the new location where it's located now. And as we come across, this is a store and a rooming house by the late Rob. And he also had a little club in that building. He owned this building here, and he rented this out. None of these houses had utilities. This is a row house, part of a row house, should say, about 4 or 5 of them together, and all of them had outside sheds or say no running water. Coming here to identify, this is Mrs. Thomas. She is breaking ground for the independent hall, which I will classify as community building. This is her husband, Mr. Thomas. This is Mrs. Florence Perry. And this is Mrs. Miley. And this is Mr. Fireman. The others I do not recognize or remember at this time. This is Mr. Griffin's garage, and this tall building here is the top of, or the apartment of Kemper Store on the corner of Johnson and West Greenwich Street. Come further down, his store is on the corner there.
About what time period do you think this photograph was taken?
I would say in between the 20s and 30s, based on the vehicles.
Okay, and there you can see the vehicles good.
If you notice right here.
And how many of these buildings shown here are still standing?
Only 2.
Which ones?
The garage and Kemper Store.
Okay.
There's now a church and only 2. The rest of them have been torn down.
And what's in their place now?
Now this is a closed apartment / store. This is a vacant lot. And here we have a fish market. It used to be a fish market. Then it was converted into a cleaners, and the building was vacant. But further down, you don't see the rest of it, but we have a church and a house and the independent hall.
And what was independent hall used for?
Community activities. For example, I was a member of the Les Jaloon Social Club Teenagers, and we had our little record hops there. Churches had their meetings there. Carver Heights organization had their meetings there for a while. So it was more of a community activity building.
And is it still standing?
Yes.
And how is it used today?
I really don't know. This I haven't seen anyone, but I don't know if it's still used as a church or what. But I have not had any contact with the new owner.
And what street does it face on?
Allen Avenue on Gwinnett, on the north side of Gwinnett facing Allen Avenue.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to say about these photographs here?
No, no, I don't think so.
All right. Kelly, do you have some additional photographs you want to look at?
I think these are just duplicates.
Duplicates? Okay. All right. That's great. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.